cold-blooded killer.
Lyle, my name's Kelly. I have to tell you, just to get started, I am the resident cryptid fanatic here, so I am really excited to be talking to you. My husband, I think you're probably the only connection that I can drag him to get him to look into cryptids with any kind of seriousness, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. No problem.
So Sam and I watched Legend of Boggy Creek last night. I had seen it once when I was younger. And I know you've talked about that being one of the primary things that kind of got you down the road of cryptid investigation to begin with. Can you talk a little bit more about what else drug you in that direction?
Well, I think it was, kind of something in my blood all along. I was at a very early age attracted to horror movies and monsters, and, I collected famous Monsters of Filmland magazines and stayed up late to watch horror movies and all that when I was a kid. But I was particularly fascinated with cryptids, which kind of back in the 70s, there were a lot of books, they called them monsters, and it had a very monster spin about them. So, they meshed with my interest in general monsters. And to me, they were always a little more frightening or exciting because there was a possibility they could be real. When I first remember seeing the Patterson-Gimlin film, it just freaked me right out. I'm like, that could be walking around in the woods. I grew up hunting as far back as I can remember with my father. So I was very familiar with wooded areas, with small towns and things like that. So when I thought about cryptids and things like that, it just really fascinated me. So I think it was just a natural thing. And of course, seeing the Legend of Boggy Creek, since it occurred, nearby and in places where I'd camped and visited, that just really drove it home,
Oh, yeah. Up here in Montana, obviously, we have some fun reports of things like that, too. Nothing quite as centralized as Boggy Creek, but that was a big driving force, I think, in our childhoods, too. So that's wonderful.
I grew up, it sounds like, in similar circumstances to you, always out in the woods, always hunting, home alone after school, and just kind of roaming the forests. And I don't think unless you've been out there alone by yourself, you get that primal tickle in the back of your spine that says, hey, this is my reptile brain saying that maybe I'm not the apex predator out here.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you have to put yourself in that context, and especially when you're at a young age, you're learning about the world, and you start to kind of think about these possibilities and just what could be lurking in the woods. And, it can be an eye-opening thing, and of course it's an attraction. It's just like horror movies, you kind of want to be scared, so you kind of enjoy those things, but at the same time you're apprehensive.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it opens doors to other things. Once you've acknowledged the possibility of some of these things, there are dark and light doors that maybe we didn't think about before. But if some of these creatures can exist, what else is out there?
Oh, certainly. It's all part of just the fascination with mystery and the fact that, we may not fully understand everything we think we understand. So, it gives some mystery in the world. And, for me, I come at it from two angles. I mean, I'm an adult and I'm much more logical, and I'm, scientific and journalistically sound when I'm looking at these things. But still, I retain that childlike fascination for these creatures that I've always had, and I like that. So I just, part of it is just the mystery of it, as well as the possibility that it could be documented or be proven.
I loved the books, by the way. We just ordered those to prep for this interview, and they were fantastic. One of my favorite aspects of it, and I was surprised, honestly, about is the compassion and understanding with which you handle the residents of these communities.
Yeah, I think that was, one of my goals, especially when I did the first book, The Beast of Boggy Creek, because when I first started going up to the town, doing the serious research, I could tell that these folks were a little leery about it. News reports are happening all the time, and making fun of it or winking or joking and all this. And me being somebody who's interviewed these people extensively, people who have seen, unexplainable things, I didn't want to judge them in any way. It's like, I knew that I can't prove what they saw, but I can say that, that the people that I include their experiences in the books saw something strange, and who am I to judge them? So I tried to be very, not just neutral, but just understanding about their situation and their bravery often in telling these stories, because, a lot of people ridicule them. So I appreciated that. And I wanted to do something for Falk. It was legendary, the whole movie, and I wanted to do something that they could be proud of as far as a historical book. It wasn't just, a goofy Bigfoot book or something. It was just, hey, this is history. People saw this. This happened. A movie was made. An unexplained phenomenon is going on. So that's kind of where I approached it.
Yeah, and I think that obviously contributed significantly to the depth you were able to investigate and the amount you were able to, exchange in terms of information with the residents of these communities, because there's a lot more information in your book than there has been in the research that I've seen up until that point. So it seems like that was certainly a very fruitful approach. Yeah,
it definitely was. And I mean, the more first time I'm up there, they're like, okay, here's another dude, trying to say he's going to do this and that. But as I kept returning and making friends with significant locals who had a lot of knowledge of this, they began to see that, okay, this guy's serious. He's really doing a serious approach, and he's diligent about it. And that opened the doors to be able to speak to people who had never told their stories to anybody, outside their close friends and family. So, I could see that it was working. And then, of course, the end result, I can go to that town now and everybody recognizes me and knows me, and is very cordial to me when I go there. So I think I, did what I set out to do and to do a fair book on them.
You mentioned something in your book that actually made me giggle a little bit, that I can't imagine helped that initial impression. In your footnote, you said that you looked the part. Meaning your research partner was this, attractive young lady, and then there's tattooed up, wearing black, Lyle Blackburn. Hello.
Yeah, well, that a few times I've noticed that people, can rightfully so judge a person like, okay, there's this tattoo guy. Well, can he even write? Can he type? I mean, and things like that. And so, I try to, look journalistic and stuff, but I am who I am. And, I think, and this is always just outside of even that research my whole life. I've just been somebody who just, hey, I just look the way I look. And as people know me, they realize that I'm not probably the stereotypical, I don't fit the stereotypical mold, maybe.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because a few years back when I learned about your other endeavors, this is after listening to Ghoul Town for, 12 years, I found Monstro Bizarro, and I said, holy, that's Count Lyle.
Right. Because I had a longer history of being the front man for Ghoul Town, and then, writing for Rue Morgue and things like that. So people who knew me from the band, oh, he's writing books? What? It was something of a jump, and something I really just kind of did. When I started writing for Rue Morgue, and I was doing covering cryptozoological related movies, because, there's a ton of Bigfoot movies and all that, and they knew I had the knowledge of that subject, as well as I loved horror movies. And then as I'm writing for Rue Morgue, that's when I really got the desire to write a book. And I thought, well, what's my favorite subject I'd like to research? The legend of Boggy Creek. So I almost did that just because I wanted to. I didn't expect to become something of a successful author. And then suddenly TV was calling, and I'm doing TV shows. It just all happened out of nowhere. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. So I just ran with it.
That's great. So actually, quick question. I know obviously there was a pretty direct connection to the legend of Boggy Creek. What led you in the direction of the Lizard Man as your second in-depth endeavor for a book?
Well, following Boggy Creek, I'm thinking, okay, now, I didn't necessarily have expectations to write another book, but it was successful. I thought, okay, well, let's roll with this. And I started thinking about, well, what am I going to do next? So I literally decided to go on what I call the swamp tour. I love the swamp and the spooky aspects of that sort of thing. So I went through the southeast U.S., going to different swamps, Honey Island Swamp, and Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Mississippi, and I don't know, just getting out there. And when I went to the town of Bishopville and stayed there for a little bit, I was familiar with the Lizard Man story, but once I started kind of looking into it, I realized, hey, here's another story that people don't really know all the details. It's been written about here and there, and it had a lot of elements that I liked. It had, it's a small town, proximity to a swamp. People report seeing a creepy, strange monster. I'm a big fan of the creature from the Black Lagoon, so I thought, okay, this is almost like people really reporting something like this. So I thought, that would be a cool book, or, interesting to me to do the same treatment as I did with Boggy Creek. Obviously, there's no, famous movie associated with it, but it was still a cool story. So I just, there it goes, and I put together the book.
Have you ever given any thought to production of Lizard Man as a movie? It has all the same elements, I think, that we loved in Boggy Creek.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I think it would make a cool movie if it was handled well. And it's always cool when they're based on a true story. But, I kind of tossed around these things, but ultimately, I'm a musician, and then I'm an author, and then I'm a television personality. I'm like, it's just
too many hats.
Movies. I know, Rob Zombie can do these sort of things, so it's not impossible, but I'm like, man, I think I can make a good movie, but maybe not.
Well, and when you can make quality art in different mediums.
Yeah, and the fans, when I started on this road, the Ghoul Town fans are like, what's the deal? Where's the new album? So I'm working on books, and those fans are happy, and if I'm, but then the music fans aren't. So somewhere or another, I've already got too much stuff going. So I just so far left the movies alone.
So how are the fans of both, aspects of your life, the cryptozoologist Lyle and Count Lyle? Do you find a lot of crossover?
Yeah, I think so. And one thing that's been good or ironic about doing the books and the television is that it's exposed Ghoul Town to many, many more people that probably wouldn't have found it otherwise. It's we're not any certain genre of music, and for those listening, we're sort of a mix between Johnny Cash and Rob Zombie, somewhere in the middle of that. It's very hard to explain, and it's just something people come across. But when I started, being successful in this and doing a lot of interviews on paranormal radio and things, suddenly Ghoul Town was, in a way, selling more than we had ever sold when we were up until that point. So it brought in a whole new level of fans that were on board with both things. And I think some of the older fans, of course, I've seen them at my book signings, and they ask questions. So I think there's a lot of crossover,
Yeah, I have to say personally, it's been really exciting for me to go from that. Yeah, I have, Ghoul Town records in my truck right now, and then this incredibly well-researched folk history book that could be on the shelves of a university library in any college town in America. And I think we should all be so lucky as we try different disciplines and as we age finally.
Right. Yeah. I'm thankful that I can do both at a fairly high level, and I try to always, I think I don't produce a lot of stuff. I'm not fast at it, but I try to do it in quality ways, and I think that's better than, the fans got to wait a little bit longer for a new record or a book. But I always try to do the best I can do, you know.
Well, the product is great for all of us on both ends of those fan bases, so we really appreciate it. This is kind of jumping a little bit, but I heard in an interview you got to see Willow Creek at a screening actually with Bobcat, which is super cool. If you can tell us a little bit about that, and then, you know, what you thought of the movie.
Yeah, that was very cool. And, you know, one of the benefits of, I don't know, writing about these movies in Rue Morgue and being connected to, in many ways, in these genres. There was a film festival close to Dallas here, and they show, you know, unique movies, and was somehow arranged that Bobcat was going to come and preview Willow Creek. So it was exciting to meet him. You know, I grew up a fan of his various endeavors, and he's become a really great director. So I was excited that to see what he would do with the Bigfoot subject, of which he's very interested in. And so getting to see that with him was obviously great. And getting to see it on the big screen was great. And I was super impressed with the movie. You know, it's a found footage style thing, or a video deal. And that, you know, I've grown tired of that approach. However, he did it in such a good way that I was like, okay, this is good. This is how you do it. And then, of course, the Bigfoot subject and the way he handled all of that, and just the way he can make a spooky movie really with the bare essentials. I was super impressed, and I think it's up there in the top, you know, it's easily in the top 5 Bigfoot movies ever made, if not in the top 3, maybe, you know.
It sounds to me like maybe you and Mr. Bobcat should get together for a Lizard Man movie. Then you don't have to make movies. You can hand it over to him, right?
Yeah, now see, that'd be the perfect thing. I could conceive and write these things, no problem. But yeah, you know.
We also, we do film reviews on our podcast. We reviewed Bobcat's movie glowingly. We all absolutely loved it. And we're kind of on the same page with you on found footage, but we thought it was the best found footage movie since Blair Witch, more or less.
Yeah, and I mean, likewise, have you seen Exists?
Yes.
Oh, loved it.
Yeah, I've got to keep Legend of Boggy Creek is my all-time favorite, of course, at least by, just default. But, you know, Exists and Willow Creek, right there, they're the best things that have ever been made on the Bigfoot subject. Just awesome.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
So, question about that, because I agree, loved Willow Creek, loved Exists. Both of them certainly portray these, you know, bipedal ape-like creatures, whether we call them Bigfoot or the Beast of Boggy Creek, as very malevolent creatures. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, you've done so much research with the Boggy Creek monster. What are your thoughts on whether it is a good guy or a bad guy?
Well, I think in quote-unquote real life, the evidence that these creatures are benevolent far outweighs the stories that suggest they may be aggressive or violent or anything like that, because most of the sightings fit the mold of being very brief. The creature didn't lunge or chase the people. It didn't
or even respond to attack in some cases.
Sure. I mean, it just doesn't appear that they're out to get people, because if they wanted to, with their size and their muscular structure and their expertise at being an apex predator, they could, we'd have ripped up people all over the woods.
Yeah.
They were doing the things like you see them doing in Exists. So I don't think that, that's reflects real life of what you encounter. Now, it doesn't mean that the sightings aren't spooky, because, I love that aspect of it. And if you read Lizard Man and Beast of Boggy Creek, you can see how spooky these things are, even if the thing just stands there for a few moments.
Right.
And perhaps even more spooky, because you can barely get enough time to see it in your imagination.
Enough sensory input to be just terrifying.
Yeah, it can be a worse fear. So It's very spooky, but yeah, I don't, they're not doing the things they're doing in movies. And of course, I see people complain about that, real, Bigfoot researchers and things. I understand what they're saying is because it doesn't necessarily portray what we believe the creatures to be, but that's a movie. That's why The Legend of Boggy Creek was great. It scared everybody. I mean, nobody wants to see a friendly Bigfoot unless it's a comedy like Harry and the Hendersons. So you really have two choices, kind of a comical approach or, the horror movie approach. There was another one, I'm losing the name of that one now, where they portrayed the creature just as a gentle soul, but it was a more esoteric movie. It was okay, but, give me, as far as movies, give me a terrifying Bigfoot any day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and interestingly, I have to confess, I haven't made it all the way through the book, but from what I've been able to read of Lizard Man, it sounds like that may be more on the malevolent side with, trying to attack this kid, changing his car, and reports of these cars being chewed up. Does that seem to be a little bit different in terms of intentions?
Well, certainly the sighting, sort of the seminal sighting involved in the Lizard Man case took place in 1988, in which the creature allegedly came after this young man, Christopher Davis, as his car was parked out by the Scapegoat Swamp. And I mean, that is one of the most really sensational and terrifying cryptid encounters I had ever heard. And, since that's kind of the central sighting of this, it certainly portrays the Lizard Man creature as being, aggressive and scary in the way he described it, with 3 fingers and long black fingernails and all this stuff. And it jumped on his car and it chased him and he barely got away. Certainly that suggests that the creature has it out for humans. But of course, there's other sightings where it was seen running across the road. It was standing in the woods. It was seen from other vantage points in which it really didn't even have an opportunity much to attack the person. So it's hard to say whether it's aggressive or more or less than a Bigfoot. Just hard to say.
With the increasing popularity of the cryptid hunter type, finding Bigfoot movies, monsters and mysteries, have you noticed an effect on some of these places that you've gotten to know intimately and kind of become an honorary member of these communities, whether it's Fouke or Bishopville? Has there been an influx in traffic and people trammeling the places that were special to you?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. I can see it dramatically in Fouke, where part of it was due to my book, but at the same, that kind of came on the same wave as a lot of the TV shows, because shortly after the book, we did the Monsters and Mysteries in America episode on Fouke, and then they did the Finding Bigfoot episode, and all that combined has definitely brought a greater interest in. People traveled to Fouke from everywhere. I can't remember, it was like 13 or 14 different countries just last year. There's a sign-in book, and people there all the time, and we can barely keep books in stock. There's so many tourists coming through, and that's it's grown considerably, because when you read the Beast of Boggy Creek, you see my first impression of that several years ago, when it was just sort of at a low point in popularity. And if I would do a follow-up book, it's going to be the opposite. There's a monster right there with this huge Bigfoot coming over the building. It's just crazy. The difference, people showing up. There's a Boggy Creek festival now that goes on down there with Bigfoot researchers and stuff that we started because so many people are interested in coming there. We're trying to provide something. There's tours, and then Bishopville is a little bit more split on whether they want to do anything about it or not. But even there, I think you see more people dropping by just because, oh man, I saw this on a show. I saw it on, whichever show. It's been on so many. So yeah, an increase in that stuff.
Yeah.
But it sounds like Falk has embraced that notoriety.
Yeah, it's like any town. Some of the people, think it's cool. Some of them think it's embarrassing. Some of them don't care. So you get everybody. But as a town, the mayor there in Falk, he's just like, hey, it is what it is. People are interested. They want to come here. We don't have to make anything up. We just tell them, hey, here's the facts, here's the history, here's Lyle's book. They're proud of it, and they have embraced it and made the best of it. I think that's the way to go. I mean, because like you guys are saying, we're interested in this. This is cool stuff. If I go to Falk, I hope to see something.
Absolutely.
I honestly would go to Falk to get one of those Monster Mart mugs.
Oh yeah, man. They got so much cool stuff. It's it's very touristy, but hey, it's a very small town. It's very hard to keep businesses going there. And if people are coming down there wanting stuff, they make it. I've got a whole shelf of just all kinds of Boggy Creek stuff. I just love it.
So I know, at least the last interviews that I've heard with you, there may have been a change since then, but it sounded like you've never witnessed one of these creatures yourself. Is that still the case? And if it is, have you ever had any kind of cryptid or paranormal experience at all?
Yeah, unfortunately, I've never had a sighting that I can definitively say was an unknown creature. Now, I have had other experiences. One in particular in Falk, where I heard a very distinctive howl that I cannot explain. I was with a fellow researcher friend of mine, and he grew up as a trapper in Mississippi, and between the two of us, we're pretty level-headed, and we've heard most animals that that are represented or known, and we don't know what that was, and it was something that kind of followed us along the bayou for a while, and we heard it 6 different howls, which gave us 6 different times to try to run in our brain. Is that a coyote? Is that a fox or a cougar or a bird? We can't explain it. It was pretty spooky. We've also found what is a possible track. I'm very leery about just amorphous tracks. I mean, I see a lot of those, but this was a pretty decent track. Unfortunately, it was in a puddle. It had rained a lot, and it had just stepped right in the mud in a puddle. We could see the track, but we were not able to cast it very well, unfortunately. But that's the breaks, and we, those little tidbits just keep you, keep your adrenaline going a little bit, and so that, there's other little things, but yeah, with no sighting.
Well, hopefully someday.
Yeah, I always think, oh yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Then I talked to some hunter who lives in this area, who's roamed around all his life. And he's like, yeah, man, I'm open to the possibility, but I've never seen anything. I'm thinking, oh great, if this guy has walked around here for 50 years, I'm like, what chance do I have? But it's all luck. So if you're not out there, you're not going to see it anyway.
Absolutely.
Any plans at all to ever head away from the swamps in your hunt?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of other cases in my files that are in mountainous areas and in, all sorts of places around the southern U.S. So as I hopefully can write more books, then, I would definitely expand from, the swamp thing. It's just, there's a lot of swamps and a lot of creepy stories. So
absolutely. So we have 2 books, one land dwelling and one potentially amphibious creature. Do you have any interest in aquatic cryptids?
I'm certainly interested in those. As far as the scope of my investigations, being that my location in Texas, we don't have a lot of lake monster sightings or histories. A lot of the lake monsters happen in the northern parts of the U.S. and into Canada and British Columbia, places like that. There's a lot more lakes up there, the colder lakes that have these sightings. So while I'm interested in those, I like to stick with areas I can go and go frequently. So as long as there's stuff in my deep south area to write about, then I'm probably, mostly concentrating on this.
Well, I have to say, if we can ever convince you to come north, we've got a hell of a lake monster up here in Montana. Flathead Lake is the largest freshwater lake west of the Mississippi. And there have been sightings, dating back 130 years of a lake creature. And I've done just some very surface research on it, but it'd be so cool to see somebody dig a little bit deeper with it.
Oh yeah, I think that's one of my favorite lake monster stories. And I'd love to dig into it. I wish I wish I could do this all the time, because I think I could dig up a lot more on each of these cases and present it that's ever been told. But only so much time in the day, only so much money in this stuff.
Yeah.
If I was sitting here doing fiction books, I could say how I'll make it all up. But the way my books are written, I got to travel and go out there, and it's costly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and more costly really than the books allow. I don't.
Independent publishing is kind of like independent music, I guess, in that.
Yeah, it is, and so it's, while I've been successful and sell probably more books than a lot of people, it's still, especially being on a publisher, I mean, I only get a small cut of that ultimately. So I've got to make any money at it, I've got to go do these speaking appearances and book signings and kind of push it myself. Sell T-shirts and things, then to get the budget so I can go roaming around on swamp tours or whatever I'm doing to
Right.
then find the most interesting stories. Now, I could sit there on Google and write a book, but man, those are not the way to do it. I like the experience of adventure and that I can bring from being there, going to the places, not just telling the story.
Well, and the product is obviously so different from the people who are just sitting on Google or sitting in a library researching. I mean, you can feel it in all of the writing, and it's just incredible.
I thank you. Yeah, it's definitely what I wanted to do, and now, of course, I've set the precedence by doing two books like that. So I think people expect, hey, how come you didn't go there? So I've got to do it now.
So you may not be able to tell us, but is there one specific, cryptid down there that you're working on your next piece for?
Well, I've slowly been trying to work on a new book. I got involved in doing some TV production gigs and things, which were good, and now working on some stuff that would encompass a much greater area of coverage, because I've got so many cool stories and stuff along the lines of southern Bigfoot and things like that I'm trying to put together and do a book that covers more ground.
So more of an encyclopedia or an anthology type format.
It's still along the lines of me literally going out and going to places and but it's just a huge area, and the undertaking is, I'm thinking this is a lot, maybe more than I can chew, but I think it's cool. And it really, I don't think I've ever read a book like this before, where it's covered so much ground in a place where, I can say I was there, and I was over here too, and I was over there too. Cause
Oh, that's awesome.
So working on that.
I noticed, much to my excitement, that you're taking some time off from another project to talk to us right now, the new Ghoul Town album, which we mentioned briefly earlier.
Yes, I like I said, the whole book and thing got me swept up, and I while I enjoy that, I think I do have some more music in me, and I had over time written pretty much a whole nother Ghoul Town album. And over this last Christmas break, I sat back and I listened to those songs fresh. Some of them had been written as much as like 3 or 4 years ago, or 5 years.
Wow.
And it had just been sitting there. And I listened to it. I thought, these songs are too good. And of course, the fans I know are just like, man, where's the new album? And I thought, okay, I don't want to look back and say those just sat there and never got recorded. So we, talked to the guys, and we decided, this year, let's do it. Let's learn these songs, let's record them, and get this new album out. So that's what we've been working on lately.
I so thrilled. I can't even tell you. I was fist pumping in the air through your talking right there.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think the songs, if you listen to Ghoul Town all the way through, I think, again, we're kind of all over the place with, you just never know what to expect in a song. There's no universal format other than it's the theme of the spooky Western kind of is in there. But I think these new songs go in new directions and familiar directions, but they're the best stuff I've ever written. Hopefully everybody else will agree, but I think they're just good songs. We did a big show here in Dallas, Texas recently, and we played 3 of the new songs, just trying to get out and actually play them live before we record them, because we like to do that. And we haven't played much lately. And we played 3 of the songs, and people were just like, oh man, it's so great. So we got good feedback so far.
So that's a teaser. When can we see you guys out on the road next?
We're going to do some dates next month in Texas. In that area, we can only do so many, because then we need to go in the studio around August. So we haven't done a tour since 2010 when we toured Europe. But it's tough. It's a tough thing because we have 6 people in the band. It's very expensive to tour. Several of the guys have kids and homes, and you literally just don't make any money. At the end of the day, with feeding 6 people and having the gas. So I know that people want to see us all over. So we have to really pick our battles. So for now, we're going to do the dates. We're doing some dates with Calabrese, the horror punk band.
Oh, wow.
Like San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Dallas, and Texas is pretty big. So you can do some tour dates there, because heck, we've done that, played 2 or 3 countries before, and what we can cover in Texas. But we'll be out there in a limited amount as we can do it, and then hopefully once the album gets recorded and that comes out, then it's a better reason to to get out there and promote something new and make sure people know we got a new album and hear some songs. So hopefully, I don't know, later this fall or next spring. Let's see, we played Montana, we played we played in Missoula, years ago. We used to tour all over, when we were a lot younger and had less responsibility. We toured everywhere, but we had some great shows in Montana. I remember those.
When you get out on the road, do you have a chance to explore local legends, or is that the hammer down?
Usually the hammer down. It's usually all we can do to get enough sleep and get to the next town, unless it's just in a real convenient proximity. There's not been a whole lot of that. I've certainly seen my share of the whole world and been to almost all of the states and all that, but unfortunately didn't get to do all the cryptozoological excursions that I would have wanted to, had I, just been able to, if we'd have had a day off between every gig or something. But now it's,
in a perfect world.
Yeah, slept 4 hours. Is that it? Now I'm going to drive 8 hours to someplace else. I was like, oh man.
Well, Lyle, I again can't tell you how much we here at Frightday appreciate you taking the time. We know you're a busy guy and have been doing some fantastic work that's keeping us entertained and informed. Where can we and our listeners and website viewers go to find everything that you have to offer, and what can they find there?
Well, I have much to offer, obviously. The best place to start would probably be my website. It's Lyle Blackburn, Lyle Blackburn.com. I've got links there to purchase my books. There's a link there to ghoultown.com where you can check out the band. The books are available at Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, and all the flavors like Kindle, Nook, ebook from iTunes, so you can find whatever you like. And there's links from my site to there. And I've also got a special Fouke Monster site, FoukeMonster.net, Fouke monster.net, where I've got additional information on the Fouke Monster, and that's where I you can get autographed books, and I've got posters and shirts and all that. So yeah, just check out LyleBlackburn.com and get the links from there, and hopefully support some of the stuff, and I can get some new books written and some new music, and the fans won't revolt on me.
Oh, that's great. Well, yeah, we will definitely point people in that direction. And also in 3 days, it looks like you're going to be on Animal Planet again with a Finding Bigfoot episode. Is that right?
That is right. Yes, that is coming up Sunday night, and it's going to be a good one because whereas I was on the Return to Boggy Creek episode a few seasons ago, this one they're going to Caddo Lake, which straddles Louisiana and Texas. And there's a long history of Bigfoot sightings there. And they made one of the seminal Bigfoot movies back in 1976 called Creature from Black Lake, which is one of my other favorites. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that on the show and that. So I'm excited to, I love those guys on the show. We've become good friends. So it's always fun to do a little episode and see how it comes out.
Wonderful. We can't wait to catch it.
Awesome.
And again, thank you so much for taking time this afternoon to visit with us.
Oh, you bet. Enjoyed it. And yeah, I appreciate you guys putting the word out there and promoting it. It really helps.